Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the webinar on Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions Postdoctoral Fellowship 2023 Application Advice, brought to you by Euraxis Australia and New Zealand. It is again great to see so many researchers, not only from Australia and New Zealand, but also from 49 different countries across the globe joining us. First of all, please allow me to introduce to you our esteemed guest speaker for today, Dr. Isabel de la Casa Lindberg. Dr. Lindberg is the Swedish national contact point for Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions. Again, many thanks for joining me in so early, Isabel from Stockholm. And I'm Nishant Sandilya, Regional Coordinator for Australia and New Zealand at Euraxis Worldwide. This webinar is a follow-up to the introductory session that we delivered on 17 May. And we are aware that several of you who joined us also had joined us in our previous session. For those who have joined this webinar, Euraxis webinar for the first time, Euraxis is an initiative of the European Commission that addresses barriers to the mobility of researchers and seeks to enhance scientific collaboration between Europe and rest of the world. We provide free information about European research, career opportunities, international collaboration, and networking possibilities. Since all of you are watching this on your laptop or your phone, I'll encourage you to type Euraxis Australia and New Zealand on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, and follow us there. Just like last time, I'd also encourage all of you to please use the Q&A function, not the chat function in the interface, to ask any question that you might have while Isabel is presenting. We'll come back to take your questions after her presentation. And as always, we will provide you the recording and the slides of the session. However, the recording will not include Q&A, and hence I'll recommend you to stay for the entire duration if you want to hear responses for the common queries that applicants have. Now, I think all these aside, let's begin with the actual presentation. And now I want to pass the presenter privilege to you, Isabel, so that you can begin with the actual advice for all these applicants. Over to you, Isabel.
Thank you, Nishant. And I'm happy to see that most of you actually got spot on the deadline. So it's important to really be on time, because there will be like no chance to submit the proposal. So for the rest of you, just have a look in the work program and the call text where the deadline is. So. And I'm also happy to see also that a lot of you also are planning to go for European fellowship, because for those of you that participated in the previous more introductory sessions that we had a couple of weeks ago, the European Commission is actually very interested in attracting researchers from Australia, New Zealand, and other third countries. So it's happy to see that. So let me just start the presentations here. And the idea now is to guide you through more advice on, let's see, start one. More advice on the, how can you see it now? It works fine?
Yes, now it's fine, yes.
Yeah, good. So this is more like application advice. So we will, for those of you that maybe were present on the previous presentation, or actually had a view on the recordings, you got a more introduction about the underlying principle and etc. That is sort of like a prerequisite in order to start considering and start writing your applications. Now we will go into a little bit more details here. So I hope that you have it freshly in your mind, those previous slides, because I will not go that much into this at this occasion. So we're going to try to cover today what makes a good proposal, and understanding the evaluation criteria, and also how to fill in forms A and B. So as a reminder then, you need to, for those of you that are completely new here, the work program is what you must have a look at, the work program here, and also the call for funding, because there's a lot of documents there that you need to address. And if you look into all the other proposal forms, they will also be linked here, and they will when they help you in the guide that you will get from those forms, they also guide you to those prerequisite documents to read. So 8 scientific panels, and it's completely bottom-up and open to all domains. That is the postdoctoral fellowship and the whole Marie Curie actions. For the postdoctoral fellowship, there's a guide for applicants that you should have a look at and read. Just a reminder, this is to remind you how important it is to really go into the nitty-gritty details and to be really sure that you have done the best possible, effort in order to write the best possible proposal here, because there is a resubmission restriction. It was introduced in 2022. So if you score less than 70%, you cannot submit the following year with the same host and same supervisor. So we always recommend early contact with the beneficiary research support office. And last time I used the word grants office, and I understood that that might not be a common entity, common word or something that you might have. It in Europe, it's quite common to have a research support office or grants office, etc. That would be the beneficiary, the host institution, the beneficiary that have some sort of organizational support at their premise. It could be HR, financial, legal support office, like a specialized grants office advisor. And it's very good to have those on board, and also together with your supervisor, of course. So, and I also highly would recommend you, although the MSCA NET Postdoctoral Fellowship Handbook is still from 2022, that doesn't really matter, because the guide for applicants states clearly what is new now in 2023 call. So there are some things that are not accurate, but most of it actually are. And it gives a very comprehensive guide to you how to really dig into the nitty-gritty details. So check out this handbook, and it will be updated. We had an NCP meeting last week. I participated on hybrid, and I couldn't participate in the whole meeting, but from what I understand it, that the MSc Net group is planning to update this pretty soon. So have a look at that one and use the 22 one now until the 23 one is out. Eligibility criteria is really important here, that you have this. We touched upon this on the last seminar. So you need to have possession of a PhD at the call deadline. So that means that you need to have successfully defended, but not formally awarded. So if you have successfully defended, you're fine. But in case you have in case you have a PhD, that's fine. But in case you are in really that you will defend before deadline, but you have not formally awarded, that's also okay. But keep in mind that it cannot be conditionally awarded. You have to prove that it was unconditionally awarded. So, and then you have the up to 8 years research experience of the PhD, 8-year rule here that you need to keep track on. There are some self-assessment tools that you can use. And then also the mobility rule, that you cannot have resided or had your main activity in the country or the beneficiary for European fellowship in the member state or Horizon Europe associated country. Or if you're going for a global fellowship that regards the host organization. So for those of you that maybe are recruiting a global fellow, keep track of the mobility rules in terms of them. And that means that they cannot have resided for more than 12 months in the 36 months before deadline. So when it comes to the evaluation here, there is a process that is like a one-step process. You can read more about it in the link down there. I touched upon this last time also. It's the European Research Executive Agency that handles all the application things and actually all the administration of the granted proposals too. So these are more like the legal management office of the Commission in terms of Horizon Europe. So each panel is overseen by a panel chair. You remember those 8 panels that I mentioned? So each are overseen by a panel chair. And the panel chair also have several vice chairs to help them. And then there is an independent observer that's appointed by REA to observe the overall evaluation process. But it's basically a one-step evaluation, and the evaluators don't meet each other. They do an individual assessment, and then they form a consensus group and discuss to agree on a common position and come up with comments like statements and score for each proposal. And then the application, the proposal moves further in the line and finally reach the finalization that the Commission and the agency is doing, and together they put together a final ranking list here. So this is basically the overview of the process. So it's a one-step evaluation, as I mentioned, and you do the submission and evaluation. They do evaluation. They do this in something called SEP, submission and evaluation tool, and they do it fully remote. So it's evaluated by at least 3 independent external expert evaluators, and that depends on the keywords that you put in. So the REA is doing a lot of work in order to find, the best match of mix of expert evaluators in order to get the best possible evaluation of your particular proposal. So the vice chairs, as I mentioned, they are experienced external experts in the corresponding scientific field of the panel. So they are there to sort of like help to guide and do extra review of the review that the expert evaluators already did, so that the statements and the grades are coherent. You will receive an evaluation letter within 5 months from the call deadline, explaining the outcome of the evaluation and the ESR in addition to the total score proposal. So you will get this, and the 3 evaluation criteria will be given there, and comments based on the comments based on that from the expert evaluators. The main list, as I mentioned, so your proposal might be invited for grant preparation. That means that you are on a main list. However, there's also reserve lists. So the proposal may be invited for grant preparation if there is sufficient budget made available here. So if you're on a reserve list, you did really good. It's just that there were not enough funding available in the budget. But that can also change depending on the main list and the grant agreement process. So it can take up to a year, this whole going through the main list and set the grant agreement funding. There's also something called above threshold. So despite that the proposal having passed all the threshold, it cannot be funded in view of the limited budget available for the call. So this is something that you can still have good grades, so you are above threshold, but you are out of range for the foreseen budget. You can also be below threshold. Here you cannot be funded because you didn't reach the minimum necessary threshold of 70%, as I mentioned, and you will also be restricted from submit the following year with the same host and a supervisor. There's also the ineligibility and inadmissible here, that if you fail to do all these like nitty-gritty details, something is missing, the proposal will not go into evaluation. It will be not sent to the evaluators. So when we look at the significance of the evaluation criteria, like all criteria matters. So what is common when you listen to, if the beneficiaries normally organize seminars also about this, like boot camps and stuff, and normally they invite a former evaluator or a former vice chair, etc. And all of them do state they are experienced, they have been reviewing a lot of these, and they say that most researchers are very good at the excellence part here, the 50%, as you see here. It's the weight 50%. They're really good at that one. They work a lot about that one. And then maybe the impact, but the quality and efficiency of the implementation, this is where those that are not on the main list or reserve list, they might have failed a bit to explain this properly. So all criteria matters, all these different criteria and sub-criteria matters, even though the weight is like, as it is like 50, 30, 20. So keep that in mind. So if we go into the excellence criteria, the one that is weighed at 50%, there's a little bit of thinking one has to do here. So the separate question here is like, for instance, quality and pertinence of the product research innovation objectives. So this is more like the objectives. So you have to prove to the extent which they are ambitious and to the extent which they go beyond the state of art. This is what the evaluators will look for. And also soundness of the proposed methodology. For instance, the interdisciplinary approaches and how you consider gender dimension or other diversity aspects, if it's relevant for the research project. And also quality of the open science practices is here. And everything, we will go through it a little bit later, but all these things, like the really details, you can find in the handbook, you can find it also in the form, the B1 form that we go through later. But it's also under excellence criteria, they're also the quality of the supervision and the training and the two-way transfer of knowledge between the researchers and the host. And if it's a global fellowship, you also have to think about a three-way transfer, because there's a mandatory return phase back to Europe. So you have to also think about the three-way transfer of knowledge. And this is something that you have to explain why what you're going to do, why you need to go to that certain place in your proposal, etc., etc. And then it's also the quality and appropriateness of the professional experience of the researcher and the competence and skills under the excellence criteria. Under impact, then, that is weighed at 30%. It's the career perspectives and employability of the researcher. And this is maybe what differs from normal postdoctoral fellowship calls. In Marie Curie, there's the beyond the 2-year project that you might be granted. You need to prove like how, or you need to show, somehow discuss the career perspectives of this one, and also your supervisor and host institution and employability here. And also the suitability and quality of the measures to maximize the expected outcome and impacts. And this is set out in the dissemination exploitation plan that you need to have, and the communication activities. And then you have also the project contribution to the expected scientific, societal, and economic impacts. So that is also part. So all these are addressed in the B1 form. So you will get more details there when you start reading, when you start working on it, but so that you understand at least the significance of the criteria. And as I said, do not ignore the implementation here. So you also need to really prove, this is really important, like quality and effectiveness of the work plan, because everything that you state under excellence and impact has to somehow be consolidated or coherent with the work plan and the assessment of risks that you also need to touch upon. And also here comes in also the quality and capacity of the host institution. And if you have participating organizations, the quality and capacity of those, including like the arrangement of the host. So don't ignore that criteria. When we look into the different forms then, now we go into a little bit more detail here to see. For those of you that maybe already have submitted or maybe are aware of this, but for those of you that are newcomer, you have to think that there are like 2 parts where the second part is divided into 2 parts here. So you have the administrative part here, which is part A, is form part A, plus the narrative part that is, you have to separate into 2, B1 and B2. And I put in 2 figures down there. One is like more the idea, the whole, proposal itself, like what you want to do, why you want to go to the host, why that particular host, why that particular supervisor, etc. Why you want to go for maybe a secondment that is optional or non-academic placement that is optional. You need to do this in a team. This is not something you do alone, you sit there. You need to very early, already now, start to have a dialogue with the supervisor and with other maybe organizations or other supervisors that you might include. Because then you need also to go and refer to the forms. So when you fill in those forms, those 3 forms here, you need to do it together with them. Actually, the supervisor is actually expected to also explain in part B2 his or her own, So this is a joint proposal that you do together in a team. So I try to illustrate. So if you look at when you go into the portal, when you start to log in to start submitting your form, there will come these terms and conditions. It's pretty straightforward, I will say, the portal. You get the normal terms and conditions, have a look at those one. You have to pick if you want to agree the pre-registration, etc., and a little bit technical rearrangements here. And then you will end up into something that looks like this. So you need to find your organization here. I picked my organization, the Swedish Research Council. So and they need to have this pick code. And you should also pick like a short name here, which is, we're going to touch upon this also later. You have to indicate which are your roles. So in case you are the supervisor and want to recruit a global a GF, then you put in supervisor. In case you are the researchers that want to go to Europe on the European Fellowship, etc. And then you download here the part B template. So those are those are, you need to download them. So they are like Word files, templates that you download here. And then you click yourself further here. So to come into the administrative form part, you need to go in here. So edit forms, and then it will open another window so that we will go through that later. But as you can see here down in the part B and annexes here, this is the file that you downloaded, the B1 template files that you need to upload then later on as two separate PDF files. So you need to save them separate and then you put them together. So this is I understood it from that it happens that people miss this. They maybe just upload the file correctly, but you will not be able to. I mean, there will be, not all documents will be that. You will get a lot of warnings. So please keep in mind that they need to be uploaded. The part B1 and B2 need to be separate as PDF file and uploaded separately here. When we go into the part A form, then it's going to look like this in a new window here. So, and you can click when you're writing it, you might not work all the same. You click save form, it will be saved, and save or exit form here. So while you're working on it, so, and then they are, it looks like that for the first window here. And this is the administrative part of the application, as I said. And whatever abbreviation you put in, like I put in my proposal acronym NCP test, as you see here. So whatever you pick will come up here. And my proposal number that I have now in the standard evaluation portal here. So then you need to fill in the general information, participant, budget, etc. down there. So you click on each one, show, and you fill it in. If we look at the first one, yeah, exactly. And then exactly, you have a tutorial also how to fill in the forms. So you can read more there if you click there. The general information, this is where you actually put in, the proposal title, you choose it. You choose which scientific area, like the panel that you would like to be, and you need to also write the abstract. And the abstract is really important, that it's clear. It should be able to be read and understood by a general public or general evaluator. And it really should sum up the whole, because this is also what the administrators are looking at when they try to select the proposals for evaluators, etc. So follow these guides. There are a lot of information here, guides how to fill. And then as I mentioned, the descriptors and the keywords are also important that you give a good thought about. So you need to select 5 descriptors and at least 3 and best character subject of proposal. So, and then it needs to be descending in the order of relevance here. So when it comes to participants, like I did it yesterday very sloppy, but if I would have put in, for instance, an associated partner, etc. here, it would be more names sitting here, on that form. But now it was only my beneficiary. But it will be a list here. It's the administrative form. It's the evaluators will also have access to this one and have a look. So it needs to be coherent with whatever you write in the B1 and B2 forms. The budget is also, you need to be careful when you so these are like unit contributions, but if you want family allowance, you have to indicate that, for instance, etc. So use whatever advice that you have at the beneficiary's host institution in terms of legal, financial, and maybe HR, if necessary, for the family thing, for instance, in order to submit this properly here. Do be careful with the country proficiency code, that you have the right code here. This is the Swedish one, but that is also some of the errors that makes in a proposal inadmissible. I understand it, so that you actually can't, if you put the wrong one, it can be when they do the first check. So be careful with that. Contact the research support office and your supervisor together with this. We are still at the part A form. So then you have the ethics and security form that you fill in here. And this is something basic where you click yourself. You have to consider together with the team, of course, like if it regards those specific things, like how you will handle personal data. And it really depends on your proposal. here. So animal data, personal data, depending on what you're doing, etc. So this is where you indicate, and this is also reviewed by REA has ethics advisors that also review this separately. So in general, this is not done by the normal evaluators, but they can also have a look. They can also state if it's something seems strange here, they can notify. But the more detailed review is done by other evaluators, the more professional ethics evaluators. And when you look at other questions here also, you should state like about you, like the future fellow then, like if you are a national member state, associate country, did you spend, if you are like under the refugee status, etc. Where were you last year compulsory national service? So it's just like click yourself down here and try to describe the best way that you can your status. And yeah, so that would be like the end of the administrative form here. But this you might have to do it together with the research support office and your supervisors to how you should fill this one in. Then, since you have downloaded the part B1 and B2 forms, you also have to fill in those. So the B1 is a narrative part of the application, as I said. So you download it and you have to upload it, again, it's a repetition, as 2 separate PDF files. So part B1, that is like the core part of the application. And these should address the 3 criterion: excellence, impact, and implementations. And these contains tags. The EC put in tags there, and they want you to keep the tags because this is the way that they handle it in their system to how to handle it. So keep the tags, don't remove them. And this one is strictly 10 A4 sized pages. And I'm not going to go into the detail. You have to read exactly what font size they recommend, etc., etc. So have a look at that one. Because if you are above 10 A4 size pages, the excess pages will be hidden from the evaluators. So in case there was something important written there, this will not be at the evaluator's disposals, and you know, they will all be part of your proposal that will be evaluated then. So keep that in mind. The part 2, B2, that is like A4 page limit. There is no A4 page limits here. This is regards your CV, and they recommend something like 5 pages for the CV. It's description of the participating organizations, security screening that you might not, that might be additional to whatever you stated in the form, in the A form. You remember the ethics and security form. If there are some additional information that couldn't be covered there, you write it here. Only additional. If you don't have an additional, you know, you don't have to write so extensive here. And then you have the letters of commitments when it's applicable that you also put in here. So if we look more into detail here, you see how they guide you in these forms when you download them. It's really like quality and pertinence. You remember that one, the first one on the excellence, quality and pertinence of the product research. They say at minimum address the following aspects. So this is what I mean, like with the nitty-gritty details also. This you do together with your supervisor and maybe, you know, the other supervisors that you might have if you have included as comments or non-academic placements, etc. So you sit with them and go through this and really, you know, have to massage the whole thing because this is really important. This is how your proposal will be evaluated. And they give you a lot of, so you remove, of course, the parts here that you have to remove. So only remove the introduction, but this is what it has to contain explanation of. I put in this one also just to highlight how important the supervision is. Like, so supervision is one of the crucial elements of successful research. So this is the MSCA guidelines on supervision that I mentioned before. So even here in this form, they outline how important it is. So it's a key factor for researcher in the Marie Curie here. So this is an instruction, so you now have to remove it afterwards, but have a look at that one together with your supervisor. So that you can get the best explanation in your proposal for this. Now we come into the part B2, the second part of the part B, then of course, And this is the CV of the researcher, and the indicative length is 5 A4 pages here. But there's, like I said, it's like no limit. As I understand it, there's no limits if you need to use more than 5. But here is where you state, for instance, if you have granted patents or prizes, awards, so they give you information on what should be included here in the CV for you. There's also the section about capacity of the participating organizations here. So there's a table that you have to fill in. And as I mentioned, you know, the associate for GF, the associated partner for outgoing phase, that is like where you're actually going to be hosted for the majority time of your stay. That is where you put this one in here with the PIC code and short name, etc., and name of the supervisor. They all need to have identified supervisors and the beneficiary. So this is where you go through with all your participating organizations. In the template, there's like a template table, and then there are more detailed templates that you fill in more information about them. So if we're going to more about the participating organizations, some hints and tips here. Secondments, they don't have a separate budget, and they can take place up to 1/3 of duration of the project. And they are expected to have added value and include supervision. So that's why you need to state as supervisor. Placements, that has to take place in the non-academic settings, and they do have a dedicated budget and can take place after the duration of the project, only after. This is something you do after 2 years. Both of these are optional, but if you add them, you have to explain them, and they have to add value, and they need to include supervision. You will not be penalized if you don't have any secondment or placement. So the placement is encoded in part A and described in part B under subcriterion 1, 3, or 3, 4. And they need to be encoded in the table, as we previously showed, as an associated partner. And they need to have a personal identification code. For the global fellowship host outgoing phase, the host is the outgoing host institution. You must include a letter of commitment here. And they have a template also in this form that you can use. So basically can show you what information they're looking for. So, and this one, it's evaluated under implementation. So if it's missing, completely missing, if you haven't uploaded the letter of commitment, your proposal will be rendered as inadmissible and will not be evaluated. So it's important to keep, for the GF, it's important that you keep this in mind and look at what the content of the letter of commitment is. There's also, for those of you that were paid attention in the previous table that I showed, there's something called associated partner linked to a beneficiary. And that is an organization that already has an established capital or legal link to the beneficiary. And it cannot be an established link just because you are sending this proposal. It has to be regardless of this proposal, something that they had before and going to keep anyway. And what they do, they can host and train the PF because they have a capital or legal link to the beneficiary. They do not have right to claim costs, and they may not recruit, but they can, they can host you and train you, and you need to have a supervisor there. That could be for instance, companies. If there's a company with a sub-company, etc., etc., they give in the handbook and some examples. So you see there are a lot of nitty-gritty details here. That's why it's important to keep contact directly with the supervisor and the rest of the support that you can get in order to make this right. Because if you list in the tables wrongly, you might be penalized for it. You might be considered inadmissible, or you might be penalized. So these are the nitty-gritty details. Here we go into more details here. As I said, each of these templates regards beneficiaries. So you need to have separate tables for, just change this one. You need to have separate table for each participating organization. For secondments, there is an additional half a table that you need to add here. So, and all of them need to be done for each participating organization that you have. The associate party for outgoing phase, associate party for secondment, that's optional, associate party linked to beneficiary if it's applicable, and then the non-academic placement. So that is also optional. So you may, if you fail to, like I did here, as you see, you're going to get a lot of warnings. And when you read the instructions, they say that, actually we got the information on the NCP meeting last week that when they looked to 2022, those that were regarded as inadmissible, many of them had a lot of warnings that were ignored. So the system will guide you as to if there are things that you need to address more properly that are wrong here. So if you get a lot of warnings with everything you have to do, you have to keep an eye on it and try to read instructions again and do it right. So a little bit of formalia and some hints and tips here. When regards to the acronym, how am I on time? Let's see the time. Yeah, I think it's fine. Acronym. So try to use a self-explanatory title and a memorable acronym, because you will not be able to change this once you submit your proposal on the funding and tenders portal. So and also the acronym that you use, refer to it in the proposal, and you can place it in a header on each page as an additional to the already placed information here. So that's an option that I think they introduced in 2022. Which makes it maybe easier also for the evaluator and you to keep track of documents. So, and also when it comes to part B1 and B2, make sure that you're using the template from the 23 call. So really download it from the portal when you start your proposal. It's like those documents, not anything that you Google and find on the internet. And also, as I said, overall weighing of each criterion. So you need to score well in all sections in order to be funded. So this is a highly competitive grant. So don't miss the implementation and really work hard on each criterion. Don't leave any room for misunderstanding or lack of information, etc., etc. Try to be as clear as you can. So you need to put a lot of work here. I added the same useful links that we had in the previous presentation here for those of you that would like to look at this one. And I think this was my last slide.
I think we have already gone 8 minutes from our allotted time. With that, I mean, please join me in thanking Isabel for her time. I'm sure our audience got a lot of useful insights, not just today, but also during the introductory webinar. So 2 days of all your insight was really valuable. Thank you very much for joining us early from Stockholm. Of course, as I said, all of these slides will be provided to you, and the recording will also be sent. These are also included on our YouTube channel, so consider subscribing to Euraccess Australia and New Zealand, where all these recordings are available. When you exit this webinar, there are 2 survey questions that we would request you to answer. I think with that, we come to the end of today's session, and signing off and wishing you a good week ahead. Thank you very much for joining, and hopefully we'll see applications from you in the 2023 call. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.